Wondering what the F has happened to your body and your life? You're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to Season 3 of Transforming 45, where we dive into the incredible stories of how brilliant humans are navigating the midlife squeeze with courage, passion, and a healthy dose of humor. Don't miss out on any of our heart-led episodes. Hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and if you're inspired, share an episode you love with a friend. It means more to me than I can express that you're choosing to spend time here and sharing our message of midlife revolution. So let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. I've been really looking forward to this interview since Lynn first introduced herself to me a couple of months ago, actually. So today we are welcoming Lynn Harris. She is a culture-shifting producer, award-winning journalist, and co-author of 6 books, whose comedy and campaigns for social justice and gender equality have changed laws and conversations from Capitol Hill to NASCAR. She is founder and CEO of Gold Comedy, the comedy school, professional network, and content studio where women and non-binary folk grow their comedy careers, building powerful communities and making funny stuff. Harris co-created Breakup Girl, acquired by Oxygen, one of the first multi-platform internet success stories, and served as the first VP of Communications at global human rights group Breakthrough, where her blend of humor and advocacy powered some of the team's most effective U.S. campaigns. She also has worked as a Tonya Harding lookalike, which is a long story. From this bio, there are so many things that I cannot wait to get into with you today. So welcome to the show, Lynn. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So let's start at the beginning. Lynn,
Sure.
Aside from Tonya Harding lookalike, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
It all started with at the dinner table with my parents watching I Love Lucy, Carol Burnett, Laugh-In, Miss Piggy. And I just grew to love comedy. And I also was raised with values that drove me to care about social change and just keep us moving forward. And so who I am and who I've been is just someone who is always trying to figure out, how do I blend 2 things that I really love, or maybe 3, comedy, 2, comedy and positive social change. And in particular, gender equality, but including but not limited to, because they're all connected anyway, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And it's always interesting to hear the origin story. Is there anyone, so you mentioned, we are of the same generation, so I also have connections to all of those shows. Is there one or 2 moments in particular that you can think of or that come to mind when you think about what lit your fire for this?
There's one that was kind of a crummy experience that lit my fire in a good way that I can think of. And that is, speaking of our generation, I was on a Jewish youth group ski trip when I was about 15, 16 up in New Hampshire. And it was an overnight. It was like the event of the year. And there was an overnight. And when everyone was like hanging out, doing whatever we were doing, like for the social time, in the evening, I don't know how it happened, but we were all hanging out in like the big auditorium in the basement of the synagogue. And somehow a bunch of dudes, one of whom may or may not have been Adam Sandler, by which I mean was Adam Sandler, borrowed a bunch of, nightgowns or whatever it was from the girls, or Lands of Salzburg 1980s nightgowns, whatever. And like somehow got some grapefruits or some playground balls or I don't know what. And you know what they did? And they did like a sloppy, impromptu, probably pretty funny, may not have aged well, but probably pretty funny, just sloppy, impromptu drag sketch up on the stage. Right. And it killed. And I remember thinking at the time, even though I was not a sophisticated thinker about comedy and gender and the systemic patriarchy and how it relates to female humor expression, I knew in my bones, my first instinct, and I was one of like the funny girls, and there were a bunch of us, and my first instinct was, what are the girls going to do now? And then my second instinct was probably nothing that'll go over as well as that. Not because we're not as funny, but because we are received differently. We would not have been able to do something impromptu like that and sloppy. And it was funny because it was sloppy. I just knew that it wouldn't be received the same way. We would have had to have a writer's room. We would have had to have a producer and a director of photography, and like to make anything that would come as close to being well received, as opposed to just kind of getting up there and having everyone being like, what are the girls doing? And I knew that, and I was sad. So I didn't say like, all right, girls, let's get up. I didn't do it. And I don't feel bad that I didn't do it because I think I was right, but it bothered me. And so any of that, like, we are just not even going to discuss the whole, like, I'll put it this way, feminine orange oney conversation. We're just not even going to give it the time of day, but the point is, because where does that come from? It doesn't come from anything inside of us. It comes from perception. So, and it comes from like, guess who made comedy? Dudes. So even though it's supposed to be this like insider art, well, but it's not really, because it was made by the guys in charge. So that always just kind of it was stuck in my craw since, high school. And it wasn't like I vowed at that moment, I will someday start a powerful platform that's designed to help women and non-binary creators succeed in comedy. It wasn't that, but it was just like Sandler. So no shade to him indirectly, it's fine. But it stuck in my craw, and that kind of I gotta say, I ground that axe for years in different ways because it kept showing up. It wasn't like I was still stuck in high school. It kept showing up that way over and over and over. And that was my first taste of it. Because last thing I'll say is, when we were watching all those shows, I'm going to bet that when you also were watching all those shows, we weren't thinking, oh, Ruth Buzzy is such a funny female comic. We just thought they were all hilarious. Lily Tomlin, we weren't like, what a funny comedian. Like, we were just like, oh my God, these ladies are hilarious. Loretta Swit. Yeah, I mean, all of them. Young Frankenstein. I mean, we didn't think like, how great for women. We just loved them. And so, like, that's kind of my happy bubble to get and of course, at the time, they were also like, they worked twice as hard to be paid half as much. And it was still like, it was not a perfect world, but to get back to that vibe where we could just enjoy them on their own terms, and where we didn't call them, I guess we did, but we didn't think of them as like female comics. That's sort of where I'd like us all, philosophically to get back to. So I've, among other things, wanted to figure out, well, how do we help more women and, other creators succeed in comedy such that we just kind of flood the zone, make it normal for us to be there, make it not even that interesting for us to be there, so they don't have to call us women comics anymore. We're all just comics.
Yeah, absolutely. What an interesting time for us to be having this conversation.
What a fabulous time to be alive in general. Cheers.
Yes, indeed. So this is going to be like a little bit of a winding road. So I hope you go with me, because
gladly.
The thoughts are forming as I was listening to you. There were so many sort of flashes that I was having. And they follow this sort of line of, as young women growing up, late 80s, early 90s. I was born in 1977, so I remember the early days of Saturday Night Live. I remember Gilda Radner and Jane Pauley, and shows on television that had these strong female leads, like Judith Light and Who's the Boss, and then and then I think about Friends, right? So that time when you're talking about, we didn't see people as female comics, like when I think about Lisa Kudrow and Courtney Cox, I never thought of them as female.
Never.
They were this group of funny humans that sort of shaped so Friends started when I was in grade 12 and ended on the day that I found out I was pregnant with my first child. So It was this like real arc in my life that followed that show. And so I felt like in this time, this Gen X time, we were seeing these strong female leads. Like the Lilith Fair movement was happening through all of this. I felt like there was forward momentum for both women and non-binary folk. And then maybe a decade or so ago, perhaps more than that. I felt like maybe they were blinders that I had been wearing, thinking that we were moving beyond this very gender stereotyped binary space. And I don't so this is where I always come to and want to have this conversation with women, other women of my generation, and men also, because hearing their reflection is can be interesting. Where did it all start to change? And was it that we were wearing blinders and not seeing some of the colonial and patriarchalness in all of what we are experiencing, which I am sure is part of it. But I also feel like we have moved into a time that is more deeply gendered than anything I have experienced in the past. And the pushback against humans of color, gender spectrum, women is something I didn't ever expect to experience in my lifetime. What are some of the elements you see that have led us to this time right now?
So my experience moving forward from, from that one fateful night in Manchester, New Hampshire, was it's not death by a thousand cuts, because here I am, but like frustration by a thousand cuts. I, thank goodness, was not a person who encountered direct abuse or directly lost, or that I'm aware of, like directly lost a leadership position because none of that obvious stuff that happens to so many other people. But it was really one of an experience of really having to fight to be taken seriously as a professional that still goes on. And, I can certainly cite all the things that have changed dramatically that I think and hope that we're not going back to. For example, I'm old enough to remember like trying to get a summer job when I was like 15 or whatever, and like remembering the classifieds in the newspaper being separated by men's jobs and women's jobs. Like, I'm old enough to remember that, like things like that feel like they're just fingers crossed, hope that that's in the past. So setting aside, so the one thing I'd like to stipulate is that there has been change, whether fast or slow, that now is in the air we breathe, that we, it's not good or bad that we don't recognize it, but we don't, like, we're so used, it's normalized now. So there's that. There's tons of things like that. But I had a great time doing comedy, and I had a great time as a journalist, but it was like sort of a daily fight to be taken seriously, and which is not just me. Obviously, this is not unique to me. I wasn't this is not my sad sack sob story. This is, all shout out to all the women who are the only women on the lineup, or to this day, and I was a journalist. I was a serious award-winning journalist for at least 25 years. And to this day, people who have Facebook and have Instagram still say, and they did even back then, when I was an accomplished journalist with my bylines in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and they would say, "So, are you still writing?" As if it was a hobby that I did at night after I don't know what else I would have been doing, right? Or when co-created a pretty big, at the time, juggernaut character, Breakup Girl, a comic book superhero, which was the first like multimedia internet success, truly, with my co-creator, Chris, who lives right over there. And at the time, it was had a massive cult following. I don't have to go into all the details, but to this day, I have never actually seen an episode of Sex and the City. And here's why. I have no reason, I have no shade, but here's why. It's like another axe I'm grinding. Because back in the day, and this is something that has changed actually, but since you asked about my journey, back in the day, people would say, well, so what do you do? And I said, well, I co-created this superhero who helps men and women with romantic emergencies, actually men and women and all people, because even then, ahead of its time, we helped people of all genders and orientations, and it was a whole thing. I would say, well, I co-created a comic book superhero character who helps all kinds of people with all kinds of romantic emergencies. And we have an animated series on Oxygen, and we have 2 books, and we have a live variety show, and we have, a super popular website, blah, 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 blah. And they would say, so is it like Sex and the City? And I'd be like, literally, what about what I just said is anything like Sex and the City, except maybe I said the word woman at some point, or maybe city. I don't know. And we just didn't have enough. It's partly just sexism, because we can't understand that there could be a whole world of things made by and semi about women, and ours wasn't even about women. Like, people didn't have enough cultural references to think that there could be anything else, that has changed. I could go on and on about all the good things that have changed. Cut to the present. If someone says, "So what do you do?" Well, I'm an entrepreneur who is founder of a startup subscription model business that is a comedy school and a professional network and content studio that helps women and other creators succeed, other creators succeed in comedy. They'll say, "Oh, so how is your project?" Or, "Are you still empowering women?" Or, I hate the word empowering. Sorry, we can talk about that. Or, how is your program? How is your program? And can I make a I'd love to donate. I was like, I literally just said it's a for-profit business. Like, you can give me some money if you want, but you'll have to, we'll have to talk about how to do that. And so it's like anyone who sees a woman talking about being a founder or hears that their work in some way elevates women professionals is like, can't get past the idea that we must be doing something charitable and good to help the ladies. And the last thing I'll say is that people still call us female comics, women comics, as if we're the ladies auxiliary. And it's just, I could do an entire separate PowerPoint on how much better it's gotten, like, seriously, from the experience of the artists, from the visibility, from the standpoint of visibility. It is night and day, and I don't want to undermine any of that, but paradoxically, at the same time, like, it's still challenging out there. So I forget if I answered your question, but here we are.
Sorry, a spider just like dropped down right in front of me as you were speaking. It's crawling across my computer screen.
Oh, cute. I love spiders.
What is interesting to me on a lot of levels, and one of the things I really like to do in this show is hold two truths at the same time.
Yes.
So absolutely, there is truth in there has been significant change, and at the same time, there is still significant resistance. And the resistance often comes because of the change
Yes.
that came before it. So
yes.
In the last 20 years, there has been a remarkable amount of change. I always like to think, and in my mind, I have this like beautiful sort of coming of age story of what my high school was like. And I lived in a very small town. My graduating class was 32 people, and I felt like everybody was free to be themselves until after high school and folks went to university. And at that point, they started coming out. Part of it was the timing, right? Not a lot of kids were coming out in high school in the mid.
Right.
So part of it was that. But I always thought that there was this safe space that if that's the way they presented, then they could be that. I understand now through lots of different contextual pieces that it takes people the time that it takes. And no matter what my beautiful coming of age story was of that time, other people were having different experiences. And so I can see now how much that has changed, like from my experience to my kids. So both my kids have now graduated from high school, but their experience was very different in that there was much more space for kids to be their authentic selves and bring all of those pieces together. And so absolutely, I have seen that arc of change, and at the same time felt that deep resistance of pushback against it. Like even on just the most base level, one of the things I was doing in my last year of teaching was advocating that during June we could just fly the pride flag.
God forbid.
God forbid. And there was so much, we have this policy that says you can only fly this flag on the flagpole and blah, 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 blah. And the principal of equity had written me back saying, you know what, this would be a really great inquiry or advocacy piece for kids at your school. Thank you for this expression. It's making me feel better. This would be a great advocacy piece for kids at your school to, write letters and advocate for it. And I wrote back and I said, at one point, I said, there is nothing about my practice that wants to stifle student voice. I am absolutely supportive of everything about that. But there has already been a human rights code decision in Ontario that has stated that the pride flag should be flown at public buildings. And I am not going to ask kids to advocate for something that the Ontario Human Rights Code has already established.
Mic drop.
I did not make any friends. Let's say that it was that year, at the end of that year, that I ended up resigning because people in power had made my life so uncomfortable.
I'm so sorry that happened. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean, I used to think that, I'm so sorry that happened, and thank you for advocating. I mean, that's just a whole load of BS, and worse. But, and also it's so, this is what you want to teach kids? Like, never mind the issue, like setting aside LGBT rights, whatever, like, this is what you want to teach kids, that something has been established. Like, this is what you want to teach, how government works and how protest works. What tools are we giving them? Like, the government has said this works, and now we're saying, but now you got to write a letter. Like, but that's not what they told me in the thing about why you write letters. I thought we learned last year from Ms. Pauline that when we write letters, it's for things that haven't happened yet. So I'm not understanding what you're teaching me, grown-ups. Thanks for nothing, grown-ups. Never mind what it's about. It could be just about like planting petunias on the I don't know. Jeez Louise. Yeah, I mean, I used to think that it was all a little bit like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because of course, anything that we were to do that kind of rattled the bedrock of patriarchy would make patriarchy, kind of go like, let's woo, let's stop that earthquake. But it was always it was herky jerky, but it was always moving forward. And now I'm kind of like, sorry, buzzkill, but now I'm kind of like, well, maybe it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back these days. Like wow. And I hate to say it. I do believe in my heart of hearts, in like kind of almost like at a religious level, that's not true. Like, and it's just a belief. It's not, it's based in nothing, It's just a belief that, which is why, I mean, we have to have that belief, or otherwise we won't go to the No Kings marches. You know what I mean? Like, we have to believe it. So, and I'm willing to, and I'm not just willing to, I'm commanded to, in my soul. But like, it's a very disheartening time to feel like stuff that was freaking basic a little while ago is not. And yet, I don't know, I think, just to like bring it back to comedy, like there's one thing I haven't seen as much, and now I'm going to jinx it, is one of the things that I want to, holding 2 truths when I said this and I was going to go back to it, like the stuff that has changed in entertainment is so remarkable to me. And not to undermine, our predecessors, like, Billy Crystal's gay character on Soap, or all the things that kind of that did actually, I think, in the aggregate, move the needle. Ellen, Will, Grace, so in the aggregate, I think it does move the needle. It creates air cover for normalizing legislation, policy, attitudes, votes, referendums. Like it does make a difference. And I do think that stuff is marching forward. Like, I don't want to, like, don't listen to Stephen Miller and all you knuckleheads. Like, they haven't come for the television, they haven't come for like, and this is a couple years old, but I always think about Girls 5 Eva, which is like, how many shows have we had about women in middle age? I mean, everyone's like, yeah, about the Golden Girls. I'm like, no, women in middle age, like sort of making a comeback and facing ageism. We have that. We have Hacks. We have, and the amount of kind of, candor on TV shows about social issues, candor and complexity that now is like, no one picketed. I don't want to, I'm going to do any spoilers, but like, I didn't hear about a lot of picketing when there was a Smash Morton arc on The Last of Us, And I mean, yeah, they're coming for books. I know they're coming for books. Yes, I hear you, librarians. Don't at me. I know they're coming for books, and that is the worst. But there is something in comedy / entertainment that feels like don't tell anybody, but but they're kind of not just holding the line, but moving forward. Also, in the way they staff writers' rooms has gotten remarkably better. The way casting is working, the topics of the shows, the themes of the shows, the issues they take on, the proliferation of platforms. like we Gold as a content studio, we have shows on streaming platforms now that we got there outside of the Hollywood system because for reasons that are, good, bad, neutral, and may or may not be here forever, but there's an expansion, and maybe not on purpose, but the net effect is a democratization of who has access to platforms. So the topics we're hearing, the faces we're seeing, the voices we're hearing, the breadth of stuff that's happening marches on is again, setting aside the trailblazers that we all know and love, but like is really the norm now. And like that, I don't know. There's something to be said about that. Normalizing neurodivergence, even like there's so much, and like seems to like don't like just keep quietly watching Netflix and don't say anything because so there's that. And as I was saying, I think it matters. The normalizing is very important because can I swear on your show?
Yes.
Because the insane fuckery that we're normalizing right now in other spheres, overt violence against elected officials, et cetera, et cetera. It's not in the same lane, but the normalizing of, it's not just who we get to see. It's not just about like tolerance or acceptance, which I think are the lamest words. Sorry, the weakest words that we could possibly use. But the voices, faces, issues that we see in pop culture don't promote just, as I was saying, tolerance or acceptance. Normalizing is the most powerful thing they can do. And in the aggregate, I think that's what they're doing. So I don't know. I can't promise that they're going to be powerful enough, but I know that they are helping.
Yeah, absolutely. And storytelling is so key and always has been in how we continue to move forward despite extremely challenging circumstances and times. And
Yep.
it is those moments. I'm Canadian, so sitting in Canada watching the No Kings rally happen was incredibly emotional, and listening to people's responses of what it was like seeing people. It is the power of what happens when humans come together in community to express what the issue is. And I was reading some Valerie Kohar this morning, who is a poet out of California. I love her, but she talks about, yes, we resist what is happening, but we also have to dream and imagine. And I think that narrative and that storytelling is so important in the dream and imagining forward. And that sort of brings me to this midlife phase that we find ourselves in, because it is a very potent place to resist and dream. Because as women, humans who have had a certain amount of experience on this planet at this time, and many of us have moved through the intensity of parenting, find ourselves with more time and desire to get into the resist and the dream.
Yeah.
So how are you seeing comedy, particularly in your context, creating that community and creating space for women of our era to do that work?
Well, for one thing, I think one sign I started seeing during the first iteration of our current president became my favorite, which is my arms are tired from carrying this fucking sign since the 90s, which only some of us could claim. And it's very funny, but it says a lot. I always said this during Kamala. First of all, joy is a strategy, and the joy that we get from just the humor that we can put into being in those marches. We're tired. We are so tired. This is not our first march. This is not our first march. And to have some, injections and infusions of joy while we're doing it, if nothing else, because of a funny sign, counts for something. I also think that more and more, it's never too late to get into comedy. Not only because it's cathartic, which it is, not only because it's the best medicine, which I suppose it is, tied with, the polio vaccine. Not everyone in the world is going to get the same joke. And that's okay. But when we make jokes about all the stuff that we have in common right now and that we're angry about, we all get it. And that is not to exclude those who don't get it. It is simply to strengthen and reaffirm the bond we have among those who do. And like, there's not everyone in the world is going to get the joke. The one I saw at the last No King's March was it's giving small dictator energy. It's a funny sign. Not everyone's going to get that because it has like a little bit of like drag lingo. It's a niche. It's not obscure, but it's a niche joke. And the feeling of connection you get when you laugh with other people at a joke like that, a sign like that, is very affirming and energizing. So to the degree that women our age, whether it's anything from like, we're having a funny sign writing party before the march, or everything from like, you know what, damn it, I'm starting stand up, or you know what, damn it, um, I've got a pilot that's been, forming in my head for years, months, years, decades, that I finally want to write. Maybe it's political, maybe it's not. But finally being like, you know what, like tapping, and this is sort of like more woo woo than is my actual style, but there is something to be said about like tapping into that creative energy and not feeling like so beaten down by all this stuff all the time that you will then resent the fact that you never wrote your pilot, So, and by the way, we have classes for that, advertorial. We have classes that are full of midlife and mid-career women who are doing exactly that. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, A, they're doing it at this age, but B, that they're doing it at this time. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what came to mind.
Yeah, well, it's birth energy, right? It's creative energy. It is birth energy in a different way. And it's really interesting that and the research of Dr. Lisa Mosconi actually is starting to back this up. So she is a neurologist. She has studied the effects of estrogen on the brain. And one of the things she talks about is that now that our bodies are no longer focused on reproduction, we have all of this additional space for creativity, for challenge, for taking on new things. And just as you were talking, it made me think about that birth energy in a different way. We are channeling our natural capability for creation in really new and different ways, which can be really exciting and a really powerful way of reconnecting to ourselves when we have been, disembodied, disconnected for so long because of the way we had to navigate all of the structures that we were working within, whether it was career or parenting expectations or just what it is to be a fucking woman in this society.
Yep.
Yeah. And now we have that opportunity to come back and to reclaim that birth energy for ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is really powerful. And for the women that you are working with, how are you seeing that, helping them do that reconnection work?
Well, one thing I'll tell you is that, we do have this, just by way of illustration, we do have a very popular class called Build and Pitch Any Idea that's led by, no big deal, former producer from Broad City Search Party inside Amy Schumer, that she used to teach. Her name is brilliant. Her name is Ryan Cunningham. And she used to teach it at RISD, where she went to school. And she loved teaching it at RISD. She loved her students, loved the energy, loved the youthful energy, all that stuff. And then when she wound up bringing it to us after the pandemic, she keeps talking about how, again, no shade to her college kids, but just like the energy, and it's not all mid-career women, but there are many. And she's just like hair blown back by the energy that they bring to their projects. It's an intense class, and with lots of homework, and you come out and you spend 12 weeks and you come out at the end with a fully developed idea and a fully polished pitch that you've pitch to as an exercise, pitch to industry professionals. And you're ready, you're on your way after that. And so she cannot stop talking about the level of creative energy, passion, and dedication that she sees in these mid-career women who may not be making a career pivot, right? But women who are not doing this as a lark, a medical doctor, other people who, yes, work in media, but who aren't going to quit their day jobs, but people who are just like, making the time to make this work. We even have a Canadian, we have many Canadians, but someone who was able actually to sell her pilot during a pilot that she worked on with Ryan during their Hollywood writer's strike, when no one could sell anything down here. She sold her pilot up there, and she's like, mother of three, all that stuff. And she's like on her way. And she also is not quitting her day job. She's just like figuring it out because her kids are older. Like you're saying, that she has more energy for, quote unquote, her stuff.
Also, it is part of our national identity that you have to be funny.
Well, yes, that's why I'm obsessed with Letterkenny and Shoresy and all of those wonderful shows you put out. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
And that movie, My Old Ass. Oh my God. The Canadian brilliance right there.
Oh, I have not seen that one.
You got to see it.
Okay.
It's so beautiful, hilarious, slightly magic realism, but not like 5% sort of sci-fi fantasy, like 5%. But like, it's a really like realistic movie that takes place in Ontario, but in cranberry country. Like it's a
Oh, yeah.
gal who grows up on a cranberry farm, and it's her last summer before she goes to college, and things happen.
Okay. Well, I will add that to my list. It sounds like a good one.
Yes. I'm a big fan of it. And yeah, I'm obsessed with all sorts of Canadian, well, I mean, Schitt's Creek, but all sorts of Canadian productions are just, yeah, I'm from Boston. It's right there,
Yes, we are very close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to sort of wrap us up, one, I'm interested in going back to earlier, interested in hearing your opinion on the word empowered, because I think there's a theme that runs through here and
Yes.
I feel it.
Yeah. The word, it's actually in our messaging and branding guidelines that we do not use the word empowered. I don't think that people who use it are using it with bad intentions. So don't at me. I'm just saying that when you think about it just means it's a little bit that you didn't think about what you're actually saying, which is kind of like that you're bestowing power on someone. And the way I like to think about it is that person has it already, but are we letting them use it? So, I'm not that interested in someone who talks about empowering women in a male dominated workplace. I'm interested in men disempowering themselves so that she can fucking speak without being interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And am I interested in taking power away from men? Everybody calm down. No, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. I'm just saying, to me, it's like, what are we actually talking about here? We can talk about empowering women all day long, but until a few other people step back,
yes,
we have it. And we have power. Just stop talking when we talk. And that's one reason, that's a thing, one of our cute things that we say about comedy is that comedy is power, because when you make people laugh, you make people listen, right? So we're not empowering women. We're just making sure we have, the comedy skills we need so that people will listen to us.
Yeah, I feel all of that. I feel the same way about that. There's something inherent in it that says you need someone else to create the power for you, or to give you some of the power that you need when internally we have everything that we need.
Yes, and it's not our jobs. It's at some point it's a little bit our jobs, but at some point it's not entirely our jobs. Other people have to just stop talking.
And that's where allyship is so important, where it's really that we need that allyship to, like you said, recognize when an identity is taking up and sectioning all of the oxygen in the room, and realizing that and going, oh, I need to breathe some air back into the space so that other people have room to breathe.
Yes.
It's one of the reasons why I also talk about, menopause education is not just for women. It's for all humans to know and understand, because we can't do this on our own. Yes, we have everything that we need to be strong and to create narrative and to move this forward. And we need other people also picking that up and using their voices in concert with our own. And that is how we really move forward and make sustainable change.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, how do you build women? How do you empower women? Do we build our own confidence, or I don't know, maybe, sure. I mean, everyone can use a dose of confidence, right? But another way to empower women would be actually not about the women. It would be to invite men to look at the lineups that they've said yes to at comedy clubs and say, you know what? I'm not going to do this lineup until you put another woman on it. That would be empowering women, but no one talks about it that way, And yeah, it's like one of those. It's like fingernails on a blackboard to me at this point. And again, I don't want to scold people who say it, because I know how common it is and I understand what people mean. But I'm just inviting people to think, if that's the word that you want to say, okay, you have a good intention, but then I'm a writer at heart also. Okay, let's rewrite the word. What do you mean when you say that? And can you find a better word? And I don't mean in a thesaurus. Can you write what you actually, or say what you actually mean by that?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And just to wrap up, one of the things I'm doing right now is trying to make sure we infuse, we talked about joy as resistance. So infusing a little bit of joy into the last moments of all of my conversations. So
I'm done. I got none left. I'm joking.
What is bringing you joy right now in this moment?
In this moment, okay, except for one, the margin of error is one squirrel who just ate both of my giant zucchini flowers and really should not have been empowered to do that or felt empowered to do that. I have a roof. This is so like old lady of me, but I've got a really nice roof garden that is actually one of the only entities in our home that is enjoying the $100 million Kelvin temperature that it is outside right now.
Mhm.
So the garden, and I go up every morning when it's not hot out yet, and it brings me joy.
Mm.
Was
Yeah.
that what you meant? With do you mean like right
Yes.
now? Okay. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I feel that same. We are having the same weather here as you are
Yeah.
there, and my flowers are so happy.
Yeah.
And last night I walked outside. My whole front yard is periwinkle. I don't have grass. I just have periwinkle.
Ooh, I love periwinkle.
And I was sitting on my front stoop because there were a million fireflies just
Oh, the
lighting up
best.
all
Yeah.
of the periwinkle, my entire street. I went into the backyard, was laying in the backyard just on my back watching this light show of fireflies, and it was the most incredible, magical thing. And in these times, it's those
Yes.
small moments of miraculousness
Yep.
that keep us moving forward.
Agree. Agree. And you can bottle them in small terrariums for light during the apocalypse.
Hot tip, hot tip.
Hot.
Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome for that.
Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we will have all of Lynn's contact information. So if this lit up a moment of you of I have always wanted to reconnect or to connect to my comedian self, all of her contact information will be in the show notes. So make sure you check.
Yes, and reach out and email me at lynn@goldcomedy.com or DM me at Gold Comedy or Lynn Harris. And if you track me down and say you heard me on this show, then I'll give you some sort of discount for joining Gold. Depends what you want to do, but we'll figure it out. We'll give you the Transforming 45 discount.
Excellent. All right, listeners, check it out. Let's take the world over with comedy.
Electricast.